For years, this ornate downtown high-rise stood as a monument to prudent lending. Many of Oklahoma's top companies got the capital they needed right here at 120 North Robinson. Today, a new tradition begins. Former First National customers are now doing business with a major banking conglomerate based in California. The new First Interstate has many of the pluses of the failed bank with none of the bad loans. That's a good combination, and customers seem pleased.
I had really no concerns. I think the comptroller realized that it could have been a detrimental situation to the state. So I had no concerns as far as my money or anyone's money in the bank. I didn't feel like there was a real problem with that.
I'm comfortable with it. I'm going to remain doing this same transaction every day.
Well, initially I was kind of worried and upset, because it's tradition here. First National Bank's been around forever. But it's just something you guess live with.
What sets this failure in acquisition apart from most Oklahoma bank closings is the key management will stay in place. The new chief executive was brought in less than 6 months ago in an attempt to shore up the problems here. Jim Cairns will be proud to steer the bank he now describes as one of the strongest in the Southwest.
We have several millions of dollars of new fresh capital been injected into the bank. They're calculating the actual figures right now, but we will be a very strongly capitalized bank with a very, very clean balance sheet, and I think probably the strongest bank of our size in the Southwest.
The Federal Aviation Academy trained nearly 2,000 students last year. Young people from all over the world come here to learn to be air traffic controllers. They contribute heavily to the local economy, and the FAA announced today that enrollments will nearly double next year.
In air traffic control training alone, we will experience a growth of 116% over what we've done this year. In addition, students will stay longer. Student weeks at the Academy will increase almost 70%.
The increased training time is designed to improve controller performance in the field. It will also mean more money spent in Oklahoma City. The Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce reports students here contribute about $25 million a year to the local economy in housing, food, and recreation dollars. That's expected to almost double. The FAA is actively recruiting air traffic controllers today, a response, it says, to the increased need at major airports around the country. This is one of the few spots in the city that is building instead of cutting back. Terry Cook, News 4.
The baby was brought in respiratory arrest. It was in seizures. The brain, the head injury to the baby is bad and permanent, and the injuries are most visibly. The child had puncture wounds all over the soles of her feet, about 60 to 62 puncture wounds in all on both feet. The evidence we're working with right now, we think those puncture wounds were given to the child by being poked in the soles of her feet with a sharp pencil.
The court's interest in bingo was sparked by a legal dispute between two bingo hall operators. One operator accused the other of offering illegal prizes. The judge also wanted to find out if bingo profits were going to charities as required by state law. However, the planned investigation was put on hold today when Judge James Blevins reversed himself and ruled he does not have the legal authority to conduct a bingo investigation.
I'm not an investigator. I'm not a policeman. Even though this section of the statute says that I will conduct an investigation. What would I do with my findings? Then would they have been, would I've got my findings improper? Would they, it'd be something that probably that would be, could not be presented because I would be violating somebody's constitutional rights.
Judge Blevins said he could not call a grand jury to investigate local bingo parlors because of next month's primary elections. The judge said any such investigation would have to be conducted by local police agencies. Scott Wallace, News 4.
There's people like me.
The first 6 months of this year, we've had double the amount of loan loss reserves than we've had in actual charge-offs. And we want to be able to maintain that kind of position because, frankly, we have not seen a turning point in the Oklahoma economy yet.
Myself and Captain McBride, who was just in here, the only.
Is this going to be your first airplane trip, or?
No. Thank you. Have fun. Thank you. I've heard it's an exciting place, and I've never been there before, and it's a place where the whole family can go and enjoy themselves.
Is there something particular at Disney World that?
The Magic Kingdom.
What is that?
It's a place where they have mechanical puppets and stuff like that. It's all mechanical.
I realize a lot of people go to Disney World as a regular vacation place.
Guesstimate on that, Rick, like a couple of months.
The doctor.
It's going along so fantastic, I just can't believe it, and thankful to the Lord that I'm doing as good as I am. I never expected to be home in the hospital this quick, be with my family, and even something like this, less than 2 weeks, it's a miracle. Think about that particularly, and that was sheer terror. But, more a little bit of frustration with myself that I permitted it to happen. I don't think I could even I told the trooper, he asked me, and I don't think I even told him where I was shot, because I didn't know. I just knew I'd been shot.
You never lost consciousness?
I did fade out a little bit.
For the past 2 weeks, a private organization has been studying the prison's medical unit and its response to Mary Hill's death. Their evaluation has been completed and will be turned over to the Department of Corrections this week. Corrections officials say they are aware that medical personnel apparently decided the inmate was faking her seizures, but they are not prepared to lay any blame for the woman's death on the medical staff.
At the time that she collapsed, a nurse was at her side within 1 minute, and another nurse was there within 2 or 3 minutes.
Mabel Bassett has a small medical unit that operates 14 hours a day. At night, no medical personnel are in the prison. Instead, they're on call. A former corrections officer at Mabel Bassett is critical of that system.
The people on call, what was your feeling when you called them up? It's, you know,
like they didn't want to be bothered. You know, like they didn't want to bother. Well, what is she doing? You know, is she doing this? Is she doing that? You know, if she is not doing this, then give her some Tylenol or aspirin and tell her to stick in a sick call request.
Okay. How was it you described that? I mean, if they.
Basically, what had been happening is we had been holding our own. What has occurred now is because of the increased pumpage, we are not able to maintain the levels in our tanks, and this is causing pressure problems in various areas of the city.
It's a difficult situation. We simply request that they do comply, of course, and if they do not, then we do have to remind them that there is the possibility of being cited by the police.
Clifford Henry Bowen came to court wearing his orange jail jumpsuit for what may be the last time. Bowen has spent the past 5 years awaiting execution for the contract murders of 3 men at a Northwest Oklahoma City motel. Prosecutors contended during the trial that Bowen was hired to kill one of the men because of a drug deal. The state alleged Bowen murdered the other 2 victims in order to wipe out any witnesses. However, a federal court judge overturned Bowen's convictions, saying Oklahoma County prosecutors should have told defense attorneys about another suspect in the murder case. The state attorney general plans to appeal the federal judge's decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. In the meantime, Clifford Henry Bowen will remain free on $100,000 bond.
Mr. Bowen has consistently stated that he is not guilty, that he's innocent of these allegations. He's been on death row for almost 6 years, and now he has the opportunity to be released on bond and confer with his lawyers, preparing for the new trial. So it was in our interest to have this resolution.
I don't like it. I still feel very strongly that we convicted the right man in this case, and I don't think he should be out on bond. However, that's the way the system works. A federal judge saw fit to set his bond at $100,000, and there's nothing I can do about it.
No one knows for sure how long it'll take the Supreme Court to make up its mind about this case, but in the meantime, Clifford Henry Bowen will remain a free man. Scott Wallace, News 4 at the Oklahoma County Courthouse.
Get somebody else to do his bidding for him because he knows he can't win this case. You know, I mean, they think they can. There's no intent from the state of Oklahoma because I'm going to take it from him in the ballot box. So the only way he's going to be able to beat me is try to put it on me in the jury box, and he isn't going to get it. And I challenge him to come in and prosecute me. Let's just see if he's big enough to prove a crime's been committed in this case. He started this fight. Let's see if he can finish it. I don't think he can because he don't have the guts, he don't have the case, and we're going to kick him all the way out of this courthouse.
hopefully by limiting the 9 to 9, we should be able to keep up with that demand and be able to keep the water pressure up and keep the water flowing, and yet give the citizens of Edmond the opportunity to keep their yards up.
A veteran called me late one night after I'd gotten in. He says, in fact, I'll give you 2 examples. We have
coming to doing food service or computers that we're have a great deal of concern about is we knew where Pete stood on the full political rights issue. The main issue was, as well as retired school.
Well, I'd like to see him make a livable wage, that's for sure, but I think we have to look at making government more cost effective. You make government more, when you talk about government reform begins internally. What the legislature can do is provide greater incentives and flexibility for agencies to become cost effective.
Felt that needed to be done. I'm very satisfied with that. Question, I'm getting ready to go. Had it been a new, I will take it to court, and if necessary, I will appeal it, not only to the district court and to the higher courts. I have emphatically said I didn't want this trust. We don't need it, and I intend to fight it.
Tinker Air Force Base is hosting a sort of Olympics for security policemen. Security forces from 7 bases are competing to find out who's top cop in the logistics command. The Peacekeeper Challenge measures the security policeman's law enforcement and combat skills. Scott Wallace, News 4 Nightcast.
If the crash films didn't get you, today's ceremony might. Survivors of serious car accidents from all over the country gathered in the nation's capital today to kick off the New American Coalition for Traffic Safety. But that was just the official purpose of today's gathering. The more dramatic purpose was to spread the word that seatbelts save lives, as they did for these 3 Oklahoma City residents.
If I hadn't had my seatbelt on, what would have occurred? I would have gone through the windshield because I was close enough to the dashboard that my arm was cut.
That impact, threw us towards the dash. In fact, my hands broke the steering wheel, and it held us, from going through the windshield.
And I finally stopped spinning. My seatbelt held me in place so that I wouldn't have gone down an embankment. Along with the guardrail, I think they both saved my life.
After hearing the alarming statistics as to how many accident victims die because they didn't wear seatbelts, the survivors planted trees, symbolizing the lives seatbelts can save. 51 trees were dedicated here in Washington today, each one representing life. Life that these seatbelt survivors say could so easily be saved by the simple act of just buckling up. And then it was on to Capitol Hill, where a number of famous faces showed up to support mandatory seatbelt laws in states that don't already have them. Among them was Sugar Ray Leonard, whose own life was saved by seatbelts.
It's so simple, yet it can save so many lives.
And that's why these Oklahoma City residents say they'll never get into a car without putting on a seatbelt. Mark Mills, News 4, Washington.
Everybody seems to be fairly calm and has gotten the message they can continue to use their items, their checks, and their deposits, and that things are going to be made as smooth as they possibly can be under the circumstances.
Lots of folks enjoy getting out in the woods. I'm one of them. It's just great to hang out here for a while. But one of the problems you encounter is you get hungry. I mean really hungry sometimes. I think one of the best energy-rich snacks you can take along is a bunch of nuts. And you know, they don't weigh much either, and that ain't a bad deal. It's probably not surprising to you that the chemical nutrient composition of different types of nuts varies widely. Some have a rather small amount of the oils or fats, if you will, which is where most of the energy comes from in any diet source.
They range for a 100-gram portion, which is about 3 ounces. They range from about 200 calories for chestnuts up to about 700 calories for macadamia nuts. Peanuts have more like 450 calories.
As far as peanuts are concerned, it's important to know about the processing of that product.
Dry roasted would be lower in fat, and dry roasted without salt would be lower in fat and salt.
There's one more thing about these peanuts. If you buy them with the shells on them, you can really enhance the fiber in your diet. You can eat those red skins. I'm Dr. Red Duke. It wasn't all that long ago that a lot of folks never heard of pasta, much less knew what it was. That's not altogether true, though, because a lot of other folks knew a lot about it, particularly if they had an Italian background. Well, it's no longer a secret. But let me tell you, what is great is you're going to go a long way before you find a better nutritional source than pasta. Current nutritional recommendations emphasize that we should try to get a majority of our daily calories from carbohydrates, especially complex carbohydrates, not fats like we've been doing. Some good examples of complex carbohydrates are things like rice, wheat, corn, and good news, pasta.
Pasta salads have become more popular because it allows people to eat pasta in a variety of ways, whereas heretofore it was sort of like spaghetti and meat sauce.
But it is so true in other good foods that are really good for you. We can mess them up by what we put on them.
And in particular with salads, if they're laced with a lot of mayonnaise or olive oil, you can really rack up the calories.
Fortunately, there's a good way out of this too. There's some real tasty dressings that don't have many calories. Yogurt-based dressings with chickpeas, pinto beans, green chilies, and so forth are really tasty. And before you know it, you put together a complete meal that's filling, tasty, low-calorie, and just basically good for you. I'm Dr. Red Duke. You know, fruits are a great snack anytime. But when you're out on the trail and you got everything you need on your back, space and weight are big-time problems. Believe me, I've learned to lighten that load. But I've got a good solution to offer you. Dried fruits. They're light and they're full of wonderful nutrients. Dried fruits contain the same nutrients as fresh fruits. It's just a matter of most of the water having been taken out. The main advantage of dried fruits is that you can store them for long periods of time without refrigeration, and they don't weigh very much either.
They're also great additives to whole grain muffins and breads, because you can use them as a sweetener source.
Now we have to admit that dried fruits do contain simple sugars. Sometimes simple sugars are added to dried fruits to aid them in their preservation.
For example, glazed apricots or crystallized pineapple.
Now, if you have ever eaten any of these dried candied fruits, you'll know that they're sticky and they stick to your teeth. And because they have sugar in them, they could be hard on your teeth. So don't forget to wash your mouth out. There's only one problem with these dried fruits. You gotta drink a lot of water with them to compensate for all that concentrated nutrient that you put in your body. So however you get it, whether you boil the water, carry it with you, or you drink it from a clean source, drink lots of water. I'm Dr. Red Duke.
I'm George Tomic. Buckling up will soon be the law in Oklahoma. The state's new mandatory seatbelt law takes effect this February. Until then, officials will be campaigning to convince Oklahomans to use their seatbelts. The law will require drivers and front seat passengers in cars to buckle up or face a $25 fine.
Sanctions against South Africa may mean tougher times for Oklahoma wheat farmers. The state could be barred from selling thousands of tons of wheat to South Africa under the proposed sanctions. Senator Don Nichols is trying to pass an amendment that would allow the wheat exports to continue. South Africa is prepared to buy over 500,000 tons of American wheat. I'm Peter Mays, News 4 Nightcast.
Here, Mr. Lovegreen, you just sign right there. There you go.
There you are. Now, if you'll wait just a minute, please.
Well, it's a much slower way of voting. The way the system is now, it's much slower because the other was the machine with the lever, you know. And
Anyway.
it just takes more time for us and more time for the voter. But it's evidently more thorough and probably more accurate.
(1972) was the last time a Republican held the 1st District congressional seat. Even though Tulsa County is split almost 50-50 Republican and Democrat, the GOP has been unable to unseat Congressman Jim Jones. But this year, they don't have to. In Tulsa's busy Bartlett Square, Jones supporters were out rounding up last-minute votes today. But for the first time in 14 years, Jones is running for something other than his congressional seat.
Consider me, I'd appreciate it.
All right,
we'll
do
that. Well, good.
Republican Jim Inhofe was out campaigning too. The former Tulsa mayor is leading 2 challengers for the Republican nomination. And he's convinced the Democrats cannot hold on to the 1st District seat.
Demographics have changed considerably in the 1st District in just the last few years after the last gerrymandering. And I feel very confident, as do most of the unbiased observers, that it's going to be a Republican seat. So I think today's vote is going to determine the next congressman.
Voter turnout, especially on the Republican side, is expected to be the highest ever. One of Inhofe's opponents, Bill Calvert, has spent nearly $500,000 already. And the race has sparked widespread interest and increased voter registration throughout Tulsa County.